just a little time of sharing and then a special song before we go on with the rest of the story, the rest of the service. Every parent feels that their child's story is simply the best in the world and that their child is the cutest in the world. I'm really sorry to say that all of you are probably second best. We've got the best story and we've got the cutest babies. Jaden Jeevan Ross, you can sit there, don't worry. Jaden means God has heard and Anaya means God has answered. So obviously there was a lot of prayer that went into both of them. And I'll share that story. Some of you have been through our struggles. Most of you don't know why we've called them Jaden and Anaya. Life goes on. Chalta hai is what we all say, you know. So you go through school, you go through the motions of college, studies. If you're a doctor, still more studies, and then yet more studies and more studies. And then somewhere along the way, your parents will stop you and say, why don't you get married? So that happened. And if you're as lucky as me, you get married to someone amazing. I get 20 points for that. And then have a child and blah, blah, blah. For Becky and me, the problem we had, just to make it obvious, was the fact that marriage, life went on, but we were not able to have a baby. And I know some of you have been through that struggles. For some of you, it's totally alien. But yeah, we just thought time would set it right, and slowly we realized, yeah, probably this needs help. Our pastor in Trichy was with us through this time of struggle, and as we went on, we decided, yeah, some medical tests. We're doctors, so it's easy to get done. And just to cut a long story short, I had problems with my test that were probably difficult to treat. And somewhere along the time we decided, yes, we have to address this issue medically because we had the test results in hand. My Australian job was working out and I'd started applying for the Australian job, and we knew that time was coming, was getting crunched up. So at that point, we probably had another 2 months left, and the urologist there just said, Benji, we'll do a short procedure on you. It may or may not work, but we'll get that done. And so we fixed a date for the little procedure that we had. And through these months, it was quite difficult because every month I'd hear Becky cry because I knew that was not the month that we were going to have a baby. It happened for quite a few years. So I got admitted I was supposed to get admitted for my procedure. On the morning of the procedure, I woke up with a very bad cough. And doctors know that anesthesia, or even if it's local or spinal, is not really good when you've got a cough. So I called up my anesthetist and said, Anand, I'm having a bad cough. And he said, yeah, Benji, your surgeon's child has been admitted, so it's better we push the surgery by a couple of weeks. So we just went on with life, and a couple of weeks later, I got admitted for the procedure. And the church was supporting us at that time, and we somehow felt that, you know, we had blood tests, we had my test results, and as a testimony it would mean that the procedure went on well and we could testify to the world that, you know, yes, we went through it. So I had the procedure, just a day admission or two, and then we came back home, and at the end of the month again I heard Becky crying in the morning, and I thought, my gosh, it's just going to be one of those bad months again. And she came and showed me, I don't know how many of you understand this, but she came and showed me a little thing and said, there's a line there. A line means that there is pregnancy. And I looked at it and I said, there's no line there. We'd gone through it quite a few months because every time she'd think there's a line and I'd say no. And I won every time. But this time she was quite vociferous and she said, there is a line. To cut a long story short again, there was a line. And we had to confirm it with blood tests, but that's how Jaden was conceived. He was conceived probably because we postponed the procedure due to circumstances that God created in our family life. Because of that, we tried 3-4 years, but just God chose that particular time to postpone the surgery, which was the middle of the month, for Jaden to be conceived. So when I filled up my visa final applications, I proudly ticked, are any of you planning to need medical care in Australia? And I ticked and said, yes, my wife is pregnant. Probably the best joy that we had in our lives. So, you know, and that was a testimony that we shared in a couple of churches. A couple of years later, and we realized that, you know, the procedure really had not helped me, and Jaden was definitely a miracle child. God had heard our prayers, and we were again struggling through the same thing again. And only thing on my mind was, God has worked a miracle once, He'll do a miracle again. We were still in Australia, not very easy to get things done, and we knew we were coming back to India, so we kept postponing things. We landed up here, took a while for us to settle, nothing much was happening with regard to having a second baby. so we went on ahead and then did the tests again, and they showed that the tests were the same as what I had done before the procedure. And we thought we were back in CMC, everything will work out well. And then slowly, one thing after the other collapsed in my life. Some of you have been through our struggles. My parents' health took quite a setback, especially my dad's. He needed multiple procedures. So we just kept postponing, thinking, okay, we'll probably try next year. And then we were probably hitting ages when, chances were starting to come down. So we went through a reproductive medical unit. Did the tests again a year or two after we did the initial test. Obviously, they were all frowning, saying what's happened in the last 2 years. And we started, this time nothing happened, so we actually had to go through procedures with the two of us. We went through what is called IUI. And what was supposed to be 3 cycles went elaborately because there were always setbacks at home that we needed to settle. My dad kept getting admitted, and we had a lot of issues that we needed to sort it out. And so at the end of October, ma'am used to say 3 tries and then we'll have to go for the next stage, IVF, which is a fairly major planning to do. And November, I think it was October when Becky and me were very heartbroken. We were sitting with Dr. Eliama, who's just one of the most fantastic people we've met. And you just can't imagine how it is to discuss how we are going to have a baby later on. I know a lot of you have been through it. It's just easy to say we were counseled regarding IVF. Several questions in our mind, and it was probably one of the most difficult phases in my life too. Through this all, when Jaden started speaking in sentences, which was about 3 years, he'd pray for one thing. He'd pray, dear God, first it was, I want a Kuti sister, and then, when his English got a little better, dear God, please help me have a Kuti sister. 4 years, every night, he used to pray for it. So we everything in CMC has a waiting list. So we went on the waiting list. Becky was completing her course. A lot of planning that needed to go. So they said March 2017 we'll book you in. Not booking into a hotel or a vacation. It's booking you in for a procedure that could decide your future. And so life went on. And November, I think somewhere around November 16, the line came again. This time, absolutely no procedures, nothing. And while we were waiting, Eliama sent us back telling us just one thing. I know people who this waiting period has actually been very fruitful. So December, we found out that we were pregnant. This time, I could see the line. So absolutely, only thing is when you see such a big line, you're wondering whether it's twins or not. But it was just one baby. And amazing again, God first showed us that there was a problem. And you can try your own little things, but I'll work it out my way. And then God showed us, in our situation, everybody's situation is different. I know people who've never managed to conceive, and God's plan in their life is different. Our story is a little different. I know some of you will feel it's a good ending, but good endings are different for different people. I know people who have struggled for 10 years to have a baby. I know people who have adopted. But every story with God's hand in it is a true blessing. Now, I'll continue the story for 2 more minutes, and Jaden understood this when we showed him the little scan picture, and he said, that's just a little blob. Is that going to be my Kuti sister? And he prayed for one thing very spontaneous. Help the baby be born at the correct time. Okay, spontaneously. So I thought, okay, I'm a neonatologist. I don't want to have a preterm baby born very early on. 40 weeks of gestation, fantastic time. So we went and met Gigi ma'am. Pregnancy had its ups and downs. Becky was sicker this time, and home was, collapsing completely. I was just balancing too many things. My exams were coming, a lot of submissions were coming. There were times when, I didn't know what was going to happen the next hour, because every phone call that rang was some major issue. I'll share probably about that sometime. In fact, there was a time when things were just so bad, I called in Dr. Sridhar and said, I'm not coming to work today because I had a rough night in the hospital, not work. I switched off all my phones. I picked up a backup phone. Becky was sleeping next to me in tears, and I texted her saying, I don't know what to do. And I went to sleep. And then God showed our family that when you take everything away from your own control, He will bring everything back the way, with the priority it's supposed to be. I know I'm being very vague, but that's what happened to us. And I had my exams on the 3rd, 4th, so it was between August 1st and August 7th. Our due date was August 7th, and ma'am said we'll induce you on August 7th after your exams if she doesn't go into labor by then. And Jaden had one prayer again. Dear Jesus, help the Kuti sister be born in the correct time, and his prayer became a bit more complicated. I want to be the first one to see her. Don't want to go to school on that day. So I did my exams on Thursday and Friday. Saturday, for some reason, in the evening at 6 o'clock, I told Becky, we won't get this chance again, let's go out for dinner. So we went out for dinner that day. And when we woke up at 7 o'clock the next morning, which was a Sunday, her waters broke. And to cut a long story short, when Jaden prayed, help the baby be born at the correct time, it was not just full term. The correct hour, Sunday, when all of us were off work, when he was not going to school, I saw Gigi ma'am so relaxed. So we went into labor room, and somehow the peace of God, labor is a difficult time, especially when you got meconium stained amniotic fluid. Everything just fell into place. I think we went in, there were no beds, but something was arranged, and things went one after the other. Emily was there most of the time. Gigi ma'am was there all the way to the delivery. The doctors in labor room were my friends. I called my HOD was free, so I just knew that everything was, God had put everything in place so that I could just be with Becky and hold her hand. And she would hold my hand rather tightly during the contractions, but it happened. And Jaden saw her just a few hours after the delivery, and she was delivered at 3:30 around in the afternoon, so we could settle everything, and I managed to grab a few hours of sleep in G7 South and go for my exams. And the next day again we had to sort out some things with my father. My sister had come in, and everything went on well. So that's the story, and that's why we feel that calling Anaya, which is God has answered, is right, because I know that Jaden prayed the hardest for her, and I have no qualms in admitting that. God heard his prayers. God taught him to patiently pray for almost 4 years, and God answered prayers in a very, very different way from what we expected. And I hope that's the message that you get. There will be a time of waiting. There will be a time when God answers prayers, maybe very different from what you feel. As I told you, everybody's story is different. Okay? And the song that we're going to sing with my family, I think we're meeting together after so many years. We did meet in 2014 briefly, but because my dad passed away 2 weeks ago, we're all together again, and we felt that this was an amazing time to actually have this. It's No Longer Slaves, I Am a Child of God. And I'm singing this song from the perspective of Anaya as she grows up, that the fears of the world will not enslave her. I love the first verse, which starts off with, you unravel me with a melody. She always comes down to music, and I feel that God will unravel his relationship with her through music. And the second verse, which goes on to say, I'm no longer, from my mother's womb you have chosen me. We absolutely have no idea how we are going to sing it, because we haven't even checked the mics, but it's a song that you all know. So please join along. It's not a special song that we're singing. I just want it to be a song of worship that we as a family are singing.